Okay, so if you've ever struggled to stay consistent with your goals, it's not because you're lazy or unmotivated. I felt that way about myself for a long time. It's actually because of something else. Our brain is simply wired to resist change. And what's crazy is when you start working on something meaningful, your brain actually starts to rewire itself. For years, I lived with this bizarre disconnect in my mind. So on the surface, I'd push myself to achieve my goals, while underneath, this flood of self doubt kept flowing within. I figured that no one would know about my inner doubts as long as I could make things happen in real life, if I could achieve the goal. But the gap between my subconscious mind, the doubt, and what was trying to be achieved, it was enormous, and I lived in it forever. I just hope and pray things would work. And then I would actually sometimes feel shocked when they actually did. What I didn't realize was my brain was actually physically changing throughout this process, throughout the struggle. Every visualization, every small action was literally rewiring my neural pathways, even when I couldn't feel it happening. So I want to show you what happens inside your brain when you actually understand this and commit to your dreams. Well, it takes everything to a new level when you get in control of it. And what it feels like when you see that exact moment when you go from resistance to actually working with your brain to create momentum. So let's get this limiting belief out of the way today, right now. You don't just need more motivation. You actually need to understand how your brain transforms itself. How does it work on a physical level? I want to show you exactly what that looked like for me and how you can accelerate this process for yourself. Did you know our brain contains roughly 86 billion neurons, and each one can connect to thousands of others? These connections are called synapses, and that is where the magic happens. When you repeat a thought or an action, you actually strengthen the connections, creating what neuroscientists call neural pathways. The pathways you use most frequently, well, they become dominant. It's kind of like habits. What do they say? Habits are formed after how many weeks is it? A couple weeks? It's also how skills are developed. So this is great. This is how our brain helps us achieve things, but also it can get us stuck in a routine because we're also used to some of those negative things that dominate our minds as well. So it can be both a good and a bad. But when you understand what's going on, that's when you have power. So when you try to pursue a new dream or goal, you're essentially attempting to create an entirely new neural pathway. And our brain sometimes isn't ready for it yet. And your brain naturally prefers that existing highway or that existing pathway we talked about. Sometimes when those have been developed over years and decades, it can take a minute for our brain to catch up. And I actually experienced this firsthand when I started the process of considering leaving my corporate job. My established pathways kept generating thoughts that maintained the status quo. It would say, you need more experience first. The timing just isn't right. You need to save up more money. Oh, and the big one, what if you fail? Just stay put. You don't want to fail. Don't change the status quo. These weren't failures of willpower or signs that I was on the wrong path. They were simply my brain following the established neural highway. The ones that had been reinforced over decades, that you're not enough, you can't do it, don't change the status quo. The resistance you feel when pursuing your dreams isn't a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's a sign, in fact, that you're being asked to create a new pathway by visualizing the dream and also taking actions toward it. And the process initially requires more energy and just some more discomfort, everybody. But when we do it, it's going to be powerful. Because what's most important is once you understand this process, you can work with it instead of fighting against it. And you can intentionally accelerate the formation of new neural pathways. And that brings me to one of the most powerful mechanisms in your brain for creating change. So have you ever noticed when you decide to buy that new car, you suddenly start to see it everywhere? It happened with my Lexus. I never saw Lexuses before. Then when I decided it was for me, I see them everywhere. Or you've heard a new word. Someone taught you a word you'd never heard before. And then all of a sudden you start seeing it and hearing it everywhere. And you thought, this wasn't even part of the English language before I learned it. It's not coincidence. This is something that's called the reticular activating system, or RAS in the mindset community. Your RAS is essentially your brain's filtering system. Every second, your senses take in billions and billions and billions of information. And it's not just on Instagram, it's everywhere. Your conscious minds can only process a tiny fraction of that data. So how does our brain work with it? Our RAS decides what's getting through by determining what's important to you. It filters out the noise and it lets what matters to you most in based on your goals, your beliefs, your belief systems, and yeah, your repeated thoughts. For years, I misunderstood this process, and I don't even think I really knew it existed until I started watching YouTubers talk about it. I would visualize goals though in my life, and part of it I thought I just had wishful thinking. But I had no idea I was actually programming my brain's RAS, my brain's filtering system, without knowing it. I would doubt myself internally while externally pushing forward, creating massive friction in the process. But what I didn't realize was that even through the friction, somehow my repeated visualizations and actions were reprogramming the RAS. Though it's not a way to live, that friction created stress and frustration. And when I realized the connection point, that's when everything changed. So the real shift happened when I learned to be more intentional about this very process that we're talking about and to get in control of it and to learn how to create my own reality using my brain. Because when you vividly imagine achieving your goal, engaging all your senses and all your emotions in it, you're not just daydreaming. It may feel that way, but you're actually literally reprogramming your RAS to notice resources and opportunities related to that goal. Now, there's not one size fits all for how this works. A lot of people say it's best to do it at bedtime or when you wake up. I do feel that way because for some reason our brains are more malleable and flexible there. There's science that goes into that I'm not going to go into in this video, but I believe it's true. It's like when you wake up or when you're starting to fall asleep, the world kind of starts to feel like anything's possible. And that's the best time I've found to reprogram this RAS. But you can really just think about it all day long. Really, your dominant thoughts and what you're thinking about, well, that's what you're ultimately going to start filtering out for in your life. And did you know that scientists at Stanford University actually did research into mental rehearsal? And they found that when people would rehearse activities, they actually started changing their neural pathways so they were prepared for the actual event when it happened. This is widely talked about with Olympic athletes, where they use visualization extensively to actually create and strengthen the behaviors in the neural pathways before they even get on the court, on the field, or in the actual game. But here's the key insight that most people miss. Visualization alone isn't enough. To truly rewire your brain, you need to combine visualization with some actual action. And this is where the third piece of this puzzle actually comes together. Because our brains reward ourselves with something very specific that we all talk about, especially now in the day and age of social media. Our brain has an incredible chemical messenger. You know what I'm going to say. It's called dopamine. Dopamine reinforces the neural pathways that you just used. It tells your brain this pathway is important. Strengthen it. Focus on it. Over time, these small, consistent actions create stronger and stronger neural pathways, making behaviors that lead to your goals more automatic and even more natural. And this is where small wins become incredibly powerful because each small success triggers a dopamine release, which strengthens the neural pathways, leading, guess what, to more success. But here's the problem that most people do. They try to take massive changes all at once, which creates overwhelming resistance from their existing neural pathways that they're used to. It often leads us to stop, to sabotage, and that prevents the dopamine reinforcement that would actually strengthen the neural pathways. I discovered a way to trick our brains is to break down our dream into small actions that help us bypass our brain's resistance mechanisms. I mean, these are actions so small that your brain doesn't even trigger its alarm systems. You could think of them as like minimum viable actions, the smallest steps you can take that will still move your dreams forward and move you toward your goals. When I was considering leaving my corporate career, I obviously didn't immediately quit my job. Instead, I took tiny actions, spending just 15 minutes in the morning working on the business idea, or having a conversation a week with an entrepreneur, people that I wanted to be around or wanted to learn from, or writing down one insight daily about what my new life could look like. And when I would try to overwhelm myself, I would get stressed out and I would start to sabotage, and then I would come back to these minimum viable actions. That's the way that I was actually most successful in working with my brain to move toward the goal in a way that really got me there. And this brings me to the most powerful moment of all. And you may not even notice it happened, but you'll feel it. when resistance transforms into momentum. There comes a point when our new neural pathways become strong enough that pursuing the dreams no longer feel like that uphill battle that I talked about. And the actions that once required immense willpower actually have started to feel natural and maybe even automatic. This neurological momentum is actually that point when your brain has physically rewired itself, or there was a tipping point where enough rewiring happened that you feel the resistance diminished. Now, this exact moment differs for everyone, but research does show that typically it could take between 30 to 90 days of consistent action for new neural pathways to become established. The key thing here is consistency, because those small actions repeatedly, daily even, have far more impact than occasional massive efforts. And let me tell you, I lived in this space for a long time, and I still struggle with this today, where I get a new idea and I get excited about something and I want to barrel toward it so quickly. This YouTube channel is a great example. I posted a few videos and then didn't like the outcome or was feeling frustrated about the process and wanted to scrap it all. And everyone around me said, no, you need consistency, consistency, consistency. What I started to realize is, yes, consistency in the actions of posting videos mechanically actually creates momentum on YouTube, but I started to transform in the process. And now I am a YouTuber. It feels fluid. Sitting down to record these videos doesn't feel like it has the friction like it did before. And that shows the process of taking those small actions. And I believe the rewiring that happened in my brain that I can't see, but I know it's there because I can feel it and I know it happened. So it's like every thought, every action, every visualization just slowly changes your brain. And the difference is that when you understand the process, you can actually work with it intentionally. And that's what I want you to take away from this video. You can accelerate the creation of new neural pathways instead of fighting against your brain's natural tendencies and getting out of that loop where we're getting a little bit of dopamine, but it's not enough for us to break free from those embedded neural pathways or those embedded habits we've created. So we're talking about taking those small actions to start to create momentum out of it, and then our brain is going to rewire from there. Because I am a living proof you can reprogram your RAS to notice opportunities that you would have missed before. That weird word or that Lexus, like I talked about earlier. And that dopamine, work with it. It will create positive feedback loops that will help us build momentum toward training these new neural pathways. This is not about forcing change. And trust me, it's not about just willpower and brute force. It's about aligning with how our brain naturally works and naturally transforms itself. So if you're standing at that crossroads right now, knowing you want more, but feeling internal resistance, this resistance isn't a sign that it's on the wrong path. Listen to your gut. If your gut's telling you it's the wrong path, it might be, but I don't believe it is. I believe it's simply your brain in the process of giving you some resistance, and I think you need to do what we said in the video to push forward. So what I learned in the process, the question isn't whether your brain can change. It absolutely will and can. It is science. The question is whether you will get in front of it and actually direct this change intentionally so you can get to your goals with less friction and also stop programming the negative loops and negative thoughts back into our reticular activating system that keeps us in a perpetual loop. So if you're interested in working with me inside the Be Something Awesome community, go ahead and jump in the description. There's an application there that you can fill out and we can see if it's a good fit, because we talk about these very things in the community, how to craft our dreams and pursue them in a way that reduces friction and helps us work with our own brains to actually get there. So go ahead and fill out the application, and thank you so much for joining me in this video. It's always a pleasure, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a great day. Later.